At what point or points is the tangent line horizontal for g of x equals x times the square root of 32 minus x squared? A horizontal line has a slope of 0. The slope of the tangent line is the derivative, and therefore we want to find where is the derivative equal to 0. We're going to need to take the derivative of g of x, which is x times the square root of 32 minus x squared. Therefore, the derivative will involve the product rule. But before I do the product rule, let's rewrite the square root of 32 minus x squared as 32 minus x squared to the first power second root 1/2 power. Our derivative, g prime of x, will be the derivative of the first derivative of x is a 1 times the second left alone plus the first left alone times the derivative of the second. The second is a quantity to the 1/2, so we'll start with the power rule, bring the power down, leave the inside alone, subtract 1 from the power, I will call that 2/2, and then multiply by the derivative of the inside to complete the chain rule. Our first term is 1 times 32 minus x squared to the 1/2. Our second term, we're going to collect the constants together. We have a 1/2, we have a -2, which will be -2/2 if you multiply them, -2/2 or -1. We also have an x here, and we have an x here, and that will give us an x squared. And then we have the 32 minus x squared to the 1 minus 2 -1/2 power. Since we have a negative exponent, we're going to want to rewrite that by putting that in the denominator of that term. So we have 32 minus x squared to the 1/2 minus x squared over a 32 minus x squared to the positive 1/2 now that it's been moved to the denominator. If you're looking for where a tangent line is horizontal, you want the slope of the tangent line, the derivative p equals 0. If you produce a fraction with one or more terms, it's required that you find a common denominator and write all of the terms over that common denominator and combine them to a single fraction. Very important to do this. So we will need a common denominator since we do have a term that is a fraction here. And then you set only the numerator equal to 0 to have a horizontal tangent line. The denominator set equal to 0 actually gives you a vertical tangent line. We just want the horizontal tangent lines here. So our next step is to get the common denominator. The first term, which is 32 minus x squared to the 1/2 power, does not have a denominator right now. The second term has this as its denominator, so we're going to multiply the first term by 32 minus x squared to the 1/2 over itself, a form of 1. To produce the common denominator between the terms, now this first term, the numerator is going to be these two things multiplying each other. And since they have the same base, we can add their exponents. 1/2 plus 1/2 is first power. So we will have a 32 minus x squared to the first power. The other numerator is a negative x squared, and these are now combined over that common denominator of 32 minus x squared to the 1/2. Well, in the numerator, we can take the parentheses away, and we will have 32 minus x squared minus another x squared, so 32 minus 2x squared over, and that denominator, 1/2 power, is the same thing as the square root first power, just the square root of 32 minus x squared. To find horizontal tangent lines, we're going to find where the numerator of this fraction equals to 0. A slope of 0 will have a 0 in the numerator and a non-zero number in the denominator. 0 over a non-zero number is equal to 0. So we want only the numerator to equal 0. So we set that equal to 0. Now we're going to continue to solve that by subtracting the 32 to the other side, dividing by the negative 2, negative 32 over a negative 2 will be a positive 16. Take the square root of both sides, don't forget the plus or minus, and we end up with plus or minus 4 for our x's. We have two different x's. Now we want the points, which means we need to find the corresponding y coordinates to each of these x coordinates. So let's go ahead and do that now. We have x equals a positive 4 as one of them. Our y coordinate will be g of 4. So we'll plug 4 into the x and the x squared in the g of x function. So 4 times the square root of 32 minus 4 squared. So 4 times the square root of 32 minus 4 squared is a 16. And we'll have 4 times the square root of 32 minus 16 is 16. We'll have 4 times a 4, and 4 times a 4 is a 16. So we have the point x coordinate 4, y coordinate 16. Now we also had an x coordinate of negative 4. So the corresponding y coordinate will be plug that negative 4 in for the x's in g, negative 4, and then the square root of 32 minus a negative 4 squared. So we will have a negative 4 times the square root of 32 minus, that's negative 4 quantity squared. Negative 4 times negative 4 is a positive 16. This other negative is outside of the square. So we'll have negative 4 times the square root of 32 minus 16, which is 16. And we'll have negative 4 times the 4, which will give us a negative 16. And the other point will therefore be negative 4, comma, negative 16. There's the 2 points on the graph where we will have a horizontal tangent line.